Good morning. This morning, I'd like to talk about the Rainbow Gathering because yesterday evening I was commenting on Dr. Sucru's lecture about Kant's moral philosophy, and then I was over the dinner here in the conversation. The Rainbow Gathering came up because we were talking about hierarchical systems. And the Rainbow Gathering, for those of you who don't know what the Rainbow Gathering is, it's a gathering of hippies in one spot. So they move to different countries and they seek out an area like or a plateau or something. Maybe this one was up in the mountains. It was up in the Rhodope Mountains here in Bulgaria, where they had hippie gathering from hippies all over the world converge on one spot, and they stay there for maybe 2 or 3 months. So I was up at the hippie gathering, and the philosophy at the hippie gathering was absolutely amazing because a lot of my philosophy comes from my conceptual experiences. So being up at the hippie gathering was an amazing experience because, um, well, I met some wonderful people for starters, real old souls. I met some wonderful people and some amazing philosophers, like some brilliant philosophers, and we used to talk about the different morality and the different hierarchical structures and different things. Like for example, at the hippie gathering, they used to say that there is no hierarchical structure. Everyone is on a par. There's no hierarchy here. There's no hierarchical structure. But yet there was rules, and those rules had to be enforced. And as the hippie gathering grows and grows, those rules will have to be enforced more. And then you see the hierarchy becomes evident because who's going to enforce the rules? But even though, like for example, in this hippie gathering, there was rules. For example, you couldn't because of the land that they were on. There was a rule that there was no fires. Now this was the first time I believe that was the hippie gathering that there was no fires, and well, yeah, I'll talk about that again. I'll talk about the fire thing again because like I did but I was down out of the mountain at this stage, but then I was reflecting on the whole no fire thing because I only went with a hammock and a blanket and by Jesus boys, because I've been sleeping in a hammock down in the town. Uh, in Plovdiv, I'd been sleeping in a hammock outside every night, and it was lovely weather and all. But up there, it was up another maybe 2,000 or 2,500 feet, and Jesus, at night it was bitter cold, like bitter cold. So I couldn't stick it more than a few nights. I had to come down out of it, but Jesus, it was cruel, and I had to come down out of it. Well, plus I had no shoes, and there was pats to the pats to the fires were all little sharp stones, and I always walked around with no shoes at this time because in the summer I wear no shoes, but there's loads of little sharp stones, and then I had no flashlight, so I had to crawl around my hands and knees at night to find the hammock. But I went completely unprepared, and I intended to go back again, but I didn't the opportunity didn't present itself. But basically, I did a few nights up at the hippie gathering, but then the hippies all came down to me because they all came down to stay in the hostel, and that's where we continued my philosophy in relation to the hippie gathering. Like one of them was with a lad from Argentina or Brazil or one of those countries, but he studied Zen Buddhism and practiced Zen Buddhism. And I had a magnificent, maybe a 3 hour conversation with him about the different systems and the workings at the gathering. And one of them was nudity, because this is something like that I had to think about and think about and think about. Like, how do I feel about the nudity, and could the nudity be integrated into modern society? Like, what is people's issue with nudity? What was my issue with nudity? At some point, the Julius Caesar Foundation wants to have its own hostel, like maybe even a chain of hostels, but starting with one hostel where I want to do a sort of a hippie thing like the Burning Man, where once you pay for your bed for the night, everything is free food, free talks, free beer, everything, free everything. And yeah, and I want to keep our own chickens and have our own perma garden and have volunteers to run this. Uh, yeah, but anyway, that's my idea from the hostel. I digress, And but one of the questions I had to ask myself is how well if it was to be a sort of a Burning Man thing and a hippie thing, how would I feel about the nudity? Like, how would I feel like if someone wants to walk around naked? How would I? How would I? How would I? Like, is that okay? And I had to say to myself, well, it's not really for me to, come on here and start talking about imposing your morality on others and then go imposing my morality on others. Sure, that just wouldn't work at all. That would make me an absolute fucking hypocrite, would it not? It would, like. That would make me an absolute hypocrite. But I still had to contemplate the whole subject of nudity. So I was saying to him about the subject of nudity, like, because at night they used to light this big fire and men and women used to dance around this fire naked. And it was very primitive now. It was very primitive. It nearly bring you around. It's paganism, like, it's paganism, but I'm a pagan. So I love a bit of paganism, like that. Yeah, I'll play a song from some pagan music after this video, but I was there anyway, and I was saying to him about the nudity, and he was telling me about what he calls the rabbits. Now this ties into this the social structure, because I used to say to them I used to say to one or two of them, I says, like, you're trying to escape the confines of society, the social structures. You're trying to escape the confines of society and the social structures and create your own thing. But yet you're bringing everything from you're bringing your conditioning from the social structures that you're running away from and creating very similar social structures. Unconsciously, if you like, but I said maybe you need to be more conscious that you're actually recreating these same social structures by bringing your insecurities and bringing your well, for example, like the Brazilian lad was talking about what he called rabbits, and the rabbits were, say, people who heard there was naked girls dancing around the fire, and they used to come up to see the naked girls dancing around the fire and the whole spectacle of the gathering. But they weren't hippies as such, they just came up for the experience. But yet you see, at the hippie gathering, we got one meal a day, and the meal was free, but it was a vegan meal. It was a vegan meal, because there was no, like, but maybe, yeah, but because there was no sugar at the hippie gathering. There was no sugar at the hippie gathering. There was no coffee at the hippie gathering. Well, there was coffee, but you had to go to what's called the goat camp, which was fair enough. That was a little camp over to one side of the gathering, where people, if you really wanted to drink coffee, you could go over there. So obviously I made a fucking beeline for it. First thing the fucking next morning. And they used to make little flatbreads and things like that at the goat camp. So obviously that was the place to be. But that was the place to be. But we're talking about the girls dancing around the fire. But the rabbits then, as he called them, are the lads who used to come up to see the spectacle, and this included to see the girls dancing around the fire. And I said, well, how do you feel about this? But before I tell you about this, when they used to pass around the hat, after the meal, and they used to sing, the more you give, the more you'll have to give, the more you give, the more you have to give. And this was sort of emotional manipulation into parting with whoever you felt comfortable. Well, obviously the objective was to make you feel uncomfortable. Now you'd be a long time making a hippie feel uncomfortable. Well, the more genuine of the hippies, you'd be a long time making them feel uncomfortable. But some people used to just do this over the hat, with the empty hand, and give the illusion that they were putting in money. But this was only to encourage the rabbits, or the people who were coming up from the towns and the tourists, will we call them. This was to encourage them, of course, to put money in the hat. But this was a sort of a tiered social structure. It was sort of like the bourgeois is support in modern society. The bourgeois support the upper two tier, the lower tier and the upper tier, because the bourgeois are the ones who do all the work, and they support the ones who don't work, and they support obviously, like they work in the factories, like the proletariat now, they work in the factories and support the hedonistic lifestyles of the aristocrats as well, because they buy the expensive shit, they buy the, you know, and they buy the I used to, at one point I used to call the bourgeois limbo. I used to call it limbo. It's like you're not in heaven and you're not in hell, you're in purgatory. You're not in purgatory, you're not poor and you're not rich, you're just a poor cunt that's working and sustaining both tiers. But I used to say, this is sure, this is but these people who were coming to see the spectacle of the thing, they were the ones who were financing the food, if you like. Now I'm not saying them all, but they were very largely financing the food and the expenses of the camp. Camp was free. Rainbow Gathering was free. Like you can go up there and live there free. Like, and I could even have went to Turkey. Like the next one after Bulgaria was in Turkey, and I could have went to Turkey only and barred out of Turkey. Other than that, I would have been at the Rainbow Gathering in Turkey, and I would have just been a little bit more prepared. But I could tell you, like, you could live worse. It wasn't a bad life, and you could live there like absolutely free. Like all you need is well, you don't even need a tent. All I had was a hammock. But someone to share a tent with you, like. They wouldn't see you stuck, I'll tell you that. It's lovely people, like lovely people. And the music was class. The music was class. I'm gonna have to tell you about the nudity maybe tomorrow or another day, because this whole nudity thing is a huge subject, a massive subject, because we have to talk about the morality of nudity and very much where this morality stems from, because it very much stems from your own insecurities. Like Freud used to talk about penis envy, but this again comes back to the hypocrisy on what you see in others. You have to look for in yourself first, and the male and the penis envy, which Freud projected onto women and said that women suffer from penis envy. No, I think that's very much a male thing, and we'll talk about that in another video. Good morning.